16 bullets tore through Kaijin's body, and everyone thought the worst thing he could lose was his life. They were wrong. He woke up numb, untouchable in every sense. A king who couldn't feel pain, warmth, or even his own heartbeat against the world he ruled. Doctors called it permanent. The underworld called him a ghost. And Kai accepted it. Until one night. A single phone call from a girl he'd never met cracked something open inside him. Her voice, soft, frightened, foreign, hit him like fire to frozen nerves. For the first time in 2 years, he felt something. Heat, sensation, life. But what he didn't know was that in wanting her, he had just unlocked a darkness that even him might not survive. Welcome, my lovely viewers, to another amazing story on this channel. If you're here, you're about to witness something break open, something that's been frozen for far too long. This is a story about sensation, obsession, and the kind of desire that rewires a man from the inside out. Now, let's dive in, and if this hooks you, let me know in the comments. Your thoughts fuel this fire. 2 years ago, Kaijin had learned that survival sometimes required sacrifice. He'd survived an ambush that should have killed him. 16 bullets. For knives, 3 minutes of hell in an underground parking garage. The doctors called it a miracle. Kai called it a curse, because when his body healed, something fundamental broke. Tactile anesthesia, they said. A neurological shutdown triggered by extreme trauma. He could see, hear, taste, smell, but touch? Gone. Completely severed from his nervous system like a wire cut clean through. They promised it was temporary. 6 months, they said. Maybe a year. But 2 years had passed, and Kaijin still couldn't feel the texture of silk sheets, or the weight of a gun in his palm, or the warmth of another human being. He moved through Seoul's underground like a ghost in an expensive suit, ruling an empire built on fear and precision while feeling absolutely nothing. The call that changed everything came through his encrypted line at 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday. Kai had 3 encrypted lines. One for his inner circle. One for international contacts. One that almost never rang because only 5 people in the world had access to it, and 4 of them were too smart to call him at this hour. He answered without checking the caller ID. Speak. Oh shit, sorry, the voice stopped. Feminine. Unfamiliar. An accent he couldn't immediately place. Something that curved around vowels in a way Korean and English didn't. Wrong number. My bad. She was about to hang up. And then something impossible happened. His fingers tingled. Kai froze. Phone pressed to his ear. Heart doing something it hadn't done in 743 days. Speeding up, stumbling, responding. The tingling spread from his fingertips to his palm. A pins and needles sensation that felt like pain and relief and terror all at once. Wait, his voice came out strangled. I said wrong number, he couldn't breathe right. Say something else. Silence. Then, cautiously, are you okay? Her voice did it again. That same electric shock running down his spine. His nerve endings waking up like they'd been jolted back to life. His heartbeat hammered in his chest. His skin felt too tight. After 2 years of nothing, this was overwhelming. Violent. Who are you? He asked. Someone who dialed the wrong damn number at 3 a.m, she said, sharper now. Look, I don't know what kind of weird power trip you're on, but I'm hanging up. No, the word came out too fast, too desperate. Kaijin didn't do desperate. He didn't chase. He didn't need. But his hand was shaking now, actually shaking, sensation pouring back into him in waves that made him nauseous. Don't. Another pause. He could hear her breathing, could picture her frowning at her phone, trying to figure out if he was dangerous or just strange. You sound like you're having a heart attack, she said finally. I'm not. He forced himself to steady, to think, to remember how to be the man who controlled everything. I just need you to. She hung up. The dial tone felt like amputation. Kai sat there in his penthouse and stared at his hand. The tingling was fading, sensation retreating back into numbness. He flexed his fingers, pressed his palm flat against his desk, felt nothing. Nothing. Just like before. Except now he knew it was possible. Now he knew there was something, someone, who could make him feel again. He pulled up the call log. The number was there, local area code, no name attached. He forwarded it to Minjun, his head of intelligence, with a single message. find out who this is. Now. Then he sat back and tried to slow his heartbeat. He couldn't. For the first time, Kai Jean couldn't stop thinking about something other than strategy and survival. He thought about her voice. The way it had sliced through the numbness like a knife through silk. The way his body had betrayed him, responding to her without permission, without logic. Minjun called back within an hour. The number belongs to a woman named Annabelle Donald. Nigerian national, been in Seoul for 3 years. Runs a small cybersecurity operation out of Iriwan. Freelance work, mostly data recovery, encryption consulting. Some gray area stuff, but nothing that puts her on our radar. Clean record. Lives alone. No family in Korea. Kai absorbed this. Why would she have this number? She wouldn't. I'm guessing she was trying to reach someone else and transposed a digit. Pure chance. Chance. Kai didn't believe in chance. He believed in patterns, in causality, in the logic of calculated risk. But this felt like something else entirely. Give me everything on her. Financials, clients, daily routines. I want to know who she is. Sir, she's nobody. A freelancer with everything Minjun. There was a beat of silence. Then understood. Kai ended the call and stood, walking to the window. His reflection stared back at him, tall, lean, dark hair pushed back from a face that had been called handsome by people who didn't know what it cost to wear it. He looked the same as he had yesterday, but something had shifted. He pressed his palm against the cold glass and felt nothing. But he remembered the tingling, the way his heart had raced, the way her voice had reached inside him and flipped a switch he'd thought was broken forever. He'd spent 2 years learning to live without sensation, without vulnerability, without need. And now this woman, this stranger who dialed the wrong number at 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday, had undone all of it with a handful of words. Kai Jean had built an empire on control, on making sure nothing and no one could touch him. But now he had a problem. Now there was someone who could, and he needed to understand why. He pulled out his phone and looked at the information Minjun had sent. Address, business location, a grainy photo pulled from some social media account, dark skin, natural hair pulled back, eyes that looked amused by something outside the frame. Beautiful in a way that wasn't polished or performed. Real. He should leave it alone. Should chalk it up to a neurological fluke, a moment of misfiring synapses that meant nothing. But Kai Jean had survived this long by trusting his instincts, and his instincts were screaming at him that this woman was important. By dawn, he had her location. A small cyber lab tucked above a convenience store in Iriwan. Registered under a business license, so generic it was clearly designed to avoid attention. The kind of operation that handled off-books work for clients who valued discretion over legality. Smart. Independent. Dangerous in a different way than his world, but dangerous nonetheless. Kai's driver tried to insist on security. He refused. This wasn't syndicate business. This was something else entirely, something private, something he didn't want witnesses for. He went alone, dressed down in a black jacket and jeans that made him look less like a kingpin and more like every other well-dressed man in Seoul. The cyber lab was exactly what he'd expected, cramped, cluttered, cables snaking across every surface, monitors casting blue light across walls covered in handwritten notes and diagnostic printouts. What he hadn't expected was the woman standing in the center of it all, her back to the door, arguing with a screen full of code like it had personally offended her. Annabelle Donald was nothing like the women who cycled through his penthouse. No calculated beauty, no performative grace. She wore an oversized hoodie and had her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. And when she spun around at the sound of his entrance, her expression held zero recognition of who he was or what he represented. "We're closed," she said flatly. "Come back tomorrow." Kai's fingers tingled again. Stronger this time. His breath caught. She tilted her head, studying him with sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." He forced himself to speak, his voice rougher than intended. "I need your services." "For what?" "Cybersecurity consultation." The lie came easily. "I have a minor issue with my network." Annabelle's expression shifted to skeptical amusement. "You have a minor issue, so you show up at 6 in the morning without an appointment? I pay well for urgency." "How well?" Kai named a figure that would cover her rent for 6 months. She blinked. once, then laughed, a genuine, surprised sound that sent another shock of sensation racing up his spine. That's not minor issue money. That's my entire network is on fire and I need a miracle money. Then consider it a retainer. For what exactly? For letting me hear your voice again, Kai thought. For being the only person in 2 years who makes me feel anything at all. For reasons I don't understand and can't explain. For your expertise, he said instead. Whatever I need, whenever I need it. Annabelle studied him for a long moment, and Kai wondered what she saw. A desperate man pretending to be in control, a predator circling something he didn't understand, or just another rich client with more money than sense. Fine, she said finally, but I work on my terms. You don't get to dictate my schedule or my methods. Clear. Crystal. She turned back to her monitors, already dismissing him. Come back tomorrow. I'll run diagnostics on whatever system you're worried about. Kai should have left, should have walked away and processed what was happening before diving deeper. But his fingers still tingled, his heartbeat still raced, and the thought of not hearing her voice again felt like returning to that numb, half-dead existence he barely survived. I'll wait, he said, settling into the chair by her desk. Annabelle glanced back, one eyebrow raised. It's going to be hours. I have time. She shrugged, already refocusing on her work. Your money. Kai watched her work in silence, cataloging every detail. The way she muttered to herself when code misbehaved, the precise movements of her fingers across the keyboard, the occasional laugh when she solved something particularly elegant. And every time she spoke, even just fragments of thoughts voiced aloud, sensation flooded back into his body like a dam breaking. He didn't understand it, couldn't explain it, didn't care, because for the first time in 2 years, Kai Jean felt alive. Kai came back the next day, and the day after that, and the one after that, always with excuses. A network vulnerability that didn't exist. A data encryption question he already knew the answer to. Server maintenance for systems that ran perfectly fine. He paid her obscene amounts of money for problems he'd invented. And Annabelle took his cash with a raised eyebrow and a shrug that said your funeral, rich boy. By the 5th visit, she'd stopped pretending to believe him. So, what is it today? She asked without looking up from her screen. Firewall breach? Malware? Someone hacking your toaster. Kai settled into what had become his chair, the one by her desk, close enough to hear every word clearly. Routine security audit. You had one of those yesterday. Follow-up. Annabelle snorted. Right. She spun her chair around to face him, arms crossed. You know I could just send you reports. Yeah? You don't actually have to sit here for 6 hours watching me work. But he did, because reports didn't come with her voice. Didn't come with the way sensation flooded back into his body every time she spoke, every time she laughed at her own jokes or cursed at stubborn code. He'd become an addict, and she was the only fix that worked. I prefer in-person consultations, he said. You prefer being weird. But she turned back to her monitors, already dismissing him again. It was becoming routine. Kai showing up with transparent lies, Annabelle calling him on it, both of them pretending this was normal business. He watched her work. 3 hours passed. She spoke occasionally, mostly to herself, and each time his nervous system lit up like fireworks. His fingers tingled. His heartbeat steadied into something that felt almost human. For those hours in her cramped cyber lab, Kai Jean remembered what it was like to be alive. Around hour 4, someone knocked on the door. A courier, dropping off equipment Annabelle had ordered. The man stepped inside, moved to hand her the package directly. Kai was out of his chair before conscious thought caught up. He intercepted the courier, taking the package himself, putting his body between the man and Annabelle like a human shield. The courier blinked, startled. Signature. Kai signed with sharp, efficient movements, then stood there until the man left. When he turned back, Annabelle was staring at him with an expression caught between confusion and suspicion. What was that? She asked. What was what? That. She gestured vaguely at the space where the courier had been. You looked like you were about to break his arm for delivering a box. Kai set the package on her desk, his mind scrambling for an explanation that didn't sound insane. I don't like strangers getting too close. To me or to you. Does it matter? Annabelle studied him for a long moment, her sharp eyes cataloging details he wished she wouldn't notice. You're kind of intense, you know that? Intense. That was one word for it. Obsessed was another. Desperate was closer to the truth. She unwrapped the package, but her attention kept flicking back to him. You act like you're allergic to people, Kai. He flinched. Actually flinched. Because she just put words to something he'd never named out loud. Something he'd worked very hard to hide behind expensive suits and calculated distance. I'm selective about proximity, he said carefully. That's a fancy way of saying you won't let anyone touch you. She wasn't mocking him. Her tone held genuine curiosity now. I've been watching. Every time someone gets close, you move. It's subtle, but it's there. Like you've got an invisible radius around you that people aren't allowed to cross. Kai said nothing. What could he say? Yes, I can't feel physical contact, and human touch is meaningless to me except when it comes from you, and I don't understand why, and it's driving me insane. Except you're here, Annabelle continued, turning her chair to face him fully now. Every day, sitting 3 feet from me. Close enough too, she stopped, realization dawning across her face. You stare at me like I'm the sun. You know that, right? His throat went dry. I don't. You do. Like if you stop looking, I'll disappear. She leaned forward slightly, testing something. What's really going on, Kai? Because this isn't about cybersecurity. This isn't even about whatever shady empire you obviously run. He should leave. Should walk out before she pieced together too much. But his body wouldn't cooperate, rooted to the spot by her proximity, by her voice, by the way sensation crawled up his spine just from her saying his name. It's complicated, he managed. Then uncomplicated. I can't. Annabelle sat back, studying him like he was a particularly interesting puzzle. Fine. Keep your secrets. But you're paying me way too much money to just sit there in silence. If you're going to haunt my lab, at least make yourself useful. She tossed him a tablet. Security audit. Real one. My client list. Tell me who's a liability. Kai caught the tablet, grateful for the distraction. He scanned through her files, small businesses, a few gray market operations, nothing that raised immediate flags. But 3 names stood out. Organizations with connections to rivals, the kind of clients who might report back on who else was using her services. These 3, he said, highlighting them. Cut them loose. Why? Because they're not who they say they are. Annabelle took the tablet back, examining his selections. Her expression shifted from skeptical to concerned. You're serious. Always. She deleted the contacts without another word, and Kai felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not just sensation, something deeper. Trust, maybe. Or the beginning of it. You're not just some rich guy with paranoia issues, are you? She asked quietly. No. Should I be worried? Kai met her eyes. Not if you stay close to me. The words came out wrong, too possessive, too revealing. Annabelle's eyebrows rose, but before she could respond, his phone buzzed. Minjun. He answered. We have a problem, Minjun said without preamble. Kai stepped toward the window, lowering his voice. What kind? The kind where our competitors are asking questions about your new routine. You've been spotted. Multiple times. Same location, same pattern. They're watching. Ice flooded Kai's veins. Not fear for himself. He'd survived worse. But Annabelle, how much do they know? Enough to connect you to the cyber lab. Not enough to understand why. Yet, Kai's mind raced through scenarios, calculating threat levels and response strategies. His enemies were smart. They'd assume she was important. They'd assume she was leverage. They'd assume she was his weakness. And they wouldn't be wrong. Double security on this location, Kai ordered. Discreet. She doesn't know. Sir, if they've already. Do it. Now. He ended the call and turned back to find Annabelle watching him with an expression that said she'd heard enough to know something had shifted. Business, she asked. Always. She didn't push, just returned to her work. But the easy atmosphere from earlier had evaporated, replaced by something heavier. Kai stayed another hour, watching the street below through her window, cataloging faces and movements and potential threats. When he finally left, he placed an envelope on her desk. Triple her usual rate. For what? Annabelle asked. Hazard pay. Kai. But he was already gone. 3 districts away, in a private room above a restaurant that didn't exist on any map, for men sat around a table reviewing surveillance footage. He goes there every day, one said, pointing at the screen. Same building. 3 to 6 hours at a time. Alone. No security, another added. No contingency plans. No backup. Not like him. No, not like him at all. The footage showed Kai entering the building, leaving hours later, always with the same expression. Less controlled than usual, almost human. Vulnerable. The woman, the first man asked. A photo appeared on screen. Annabelle, captured through a telephoto lens, leaving her building with coffee in hand. Annabelle Donald, Nigerian national, cybersecurity specialist. No criminal record, no syndicate affiliations. Nobody important. Then why does Kai Jean visit her every single day? Silence. Then the oldest man at the table spoke, his voice carrying the weight of decades in Seoul's underground. It doesn't matter why. What matters is pattern. Kai Jean has become predictable, and predictable men can be destroyed. He tapped the photo of Annabelle. She's the weakness. Eliminate her and Kai Jean collapses. The others nodded. When someone asked, soon, but not yet. Let him grow more comfortable, more careless. Then we strike. The meeting ended. Plans were made. Resources allocated. And Kai Jean, sitting in his penthouse across the city, stared at his phone and tried to convince himself that he could protect her. That his obsession hadn't just painted a target on the back of the only person who made him feel alive. Annabelle stayed late on Thursday. A client deadline, system migration that couldn't wait, the kind of work that required focus and silence, and her fingers flying across 3 keyboards simultaneously. By the time she finished, it was past midnight, Itaewon streets mostly empty except for the stragglers stumbling out of bars. She locked up, pulled her jacket tighter against the November cold, and started toward the subway station 3 blocks away. She made it 1 block. They came from both sides, 4 men, faces covered, moving with practiced efficiency. No warning, no demands, just violence. Annabelle got her hand up in time to block the first hit, muscle memory from self-defense classes kicking in, but the second man grabbed her from behind. She drove her elbow back, connected with ribs, heard a grunt. Then something slammed into her temple and the world tilted sideways. She hit the pavement hard, vision blurring, heard footsteps, felt hands grabbing her, dragging her toward the alley. Her mouth tasted like copper. Blood, she realized distantly. Her blood. She tried to scream, but someone's hand clamped over her mouth. This was it. She was going to die in a Seoul alley, and no one would even know why. A car screeched to a halt at the alley entrance. 1 door opening. Footsteps, fast and purposeful. Then Kai Jean was there, and he was nothing like the composed, calculating man who sat quietly in her cyber lab. This version of Kai moved like violence personified, all controlled fury and brutal precision. He caught the first attacker with an elbow to the throat, dropped him instantly. The second man pulled a knife. Kai disarmed him in 2 moves, broke his wrist, drove him into the wall hard enough to crack concrete. The remaining 2 rushed him together. Kai was good, better than good, but they were professionals too, and they'd come prepared. One of them got through his guard, knife slicing across his ribs. Kai didn't slow down, didn't even flinch. He took the hit and kept moving, broke the man's knee with a savage kick, then turned on the last attacker with something close to rage in his eyes. The fight lasted maybe 90 seconds. When it ended, all 4 men were down and Kai was bleeding from multiple wounds, ribs, shoulder, a cut across his cheekbone that dripped red onto his collar. He turned to Annabelle, still crumpled on the ground, and his expression shifted from fury to something closer, to panic. Are you hurt? His voice came out rough, strained. She tried to answer, but her head was spinning, words tangling on her tongue. She felt his hands on her shoulders, steadying her, and Kai stopped breathing, his entire body locked up, eyes going wide with something between shock and wonder. His hands trembled against her shoulders, fingers pressing into fabric like he was confirming she was real. Kai, Annabelle managed. He didn't answer, just stared at his hands touching her like he'd never seen them before. Then, moving carefully, deliberately, he slid one arm under her knees and the other around her back and lifted her. The sound that escaped him was something between a gasp and a sob. He could feel her weight in his arms, the warmth of her body against his chest, the texture of her jacket under his fingers, the way she shifted slightly, instinctively wrapping one arm around his neck for stability. Every sensation flooded back with overwhelming intensity. 2 years of numbness shattering all at once. Kai, what? Not here. His voice shook. Not safe. He carried her to his car, settled her in the passenger seat with movements that were almost reverent, like she was made of something precious and breakable. Then he drove, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the center console where he could feel the leather, the texture, the reality of physical sensation after so long without it. Annabelle watched him through her dazed confusion, noting the blood seeping through his shirt, the way his hands trembled, the expression on his face like someone experiencing a religious conversion. You're bleeding, she said. I know. We should go to a hospital. No hospitals. Kai. My place. It's secure. I have medical supplies. He glanced at her, his eyes intense. Trust me. She should have argued, should have demanded explanations. But something in his voice made her nod instead. His penthouse was exactly what she'd expected. Expensive, minimalist, sterile. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul. Furniture that cost more than her annual rent. The kind of space that screamed wealth and control. But Kai moved through it with single-minded focus, guiding her to the bathroom where he kept a first aid kit that looked military grade. Sit, he said, gesturing to the counter. Annabelle sat, watched him pull out supplies with shaking hands, his movements uncharacteristically clumsy. Blood dripped from his ribs onto the white tile floor. You first, she said. You're the one who got stabbed. I'm fine. You're bleeding everywhere. Annabelle. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the barely controlled intensity in his eyes. Let me do this. Please. She didn't understand what was happening, but she nodded. Kai cleaned the cut on her temple with careful precision, his fingers gentle against her skin. Each touch seemed to affect him viscerally. His breathing would catch, his pupils would dilate, his hands would tremble before steadying again. What's wrong with you? She asked quietly. Nothing. Then, softer, everything. He finished with her temple, moved to check her arms, her hands, cataloging every scrape and bruise with an attention that felt almost obsessive. When he was satisfied she wasn't seriously injured, he finally stepped back. Annabelle grabbed his wrist before he could retreat. Your turn. He stared at where her fingers wrapped around his wrist, like she'd just performed a miracle. Kai, shirt off. Now. He obeyed, peeling away the blood-soaked fabric to reveal the damage. A long cut across his ribs, another on his shoulder, both still bleeding but not deep enough to be fatal. Annabelle grabbed gauze and antiseptic, moved to stand between his legs where he braced himself against the counter. Their bodies were inches apart, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin, see the way his chest rose and fell with each breath. She cleaned the wound on his ribs, trying to be gentle. Kai's hand came up, gripped the counter edge so hard his knuckles went white. Sorry, she murmured. Don't be. His voice came out strangled. I can feel it. What? Everything. I can feel everything. Annabelle paused, looking up at him. His eyes were closed, face tilted toward the ceiling, expression caught between agony and ecstasy. Like he was experiencing sensation for the first time. Understanding dawned slowly. His strange behavior. The way he never let anyone touch him. The obsessive visits. The way he looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd stopped asking. Kai, she said carefully, what happened to you? He opened his eyes, met hers. 2 years ago I should have died. 16 bullets, 4 knives, 3 minutes of hell. I survived, but something broke. Tactile anesthesia. I lost the ability to feel touch. Doctors said it was permanent. His hand moved, almost involuntarily, to cup her face. His thumb traced her cheekbone with reverent precision. Until your voice that first night, I felt my fingers tingle. And now, touching you, his voice cracked. I feel everything. Annabelle's mind raced, pieces clicking into place. The encrypted line, the visits, the way he'd reacted every time she spoke. She was his cure, his breakthrough, those men, she said. They came for me because of you. Yes, you made me a target. Yes. No denial, no excuses, just brutal honesty. She should have been angry, should have pushed him away. But his hand was still on her face, his touch gentle and desperate and odd, and she found herself leaning into it instead. You're insane, she whispered. Probably. This is the worst meet cute in history. Something close to a laugh escaped him. Annabelle. She kissed him before he could finish. His response was immediate and overwhelming. 2 years of touch starvation, of numbness, of half-existing erupted into desperate need. He pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her hair, the other splayed across her back, feeling the texture of her shirt, the warmth of her skin beneath it, the way she fit against him like she'd been designed for this. Annabelle gasped against his mouth, and Kai swallowed the sound, kissing her deeper, harder, like he was drowning and she was air. His hands mapped every inch of her he could reach, shoulders, waist, the curve of her spine, cataloging sensation like a man seeing color for the first time. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kai pressed his forehead against hers. I can feel you, he said, voice wrecked. God, I can feel you. Annabelle's hands came up to frame his face, careful of the cut on his cheekbone. Then feel this. Those men, they're connected to something I've been investigating. A security breach 2 years ago. Someone tried to access financial records for underground transactions. I traced it back but hit a wall. She paused. When was your assassination attempt? Kai went very still. 2 years ago. November. The breach was November. Same week. Their eyes met. Understanding crystallized between them. They tried to kill you because you found something, Annabelle said slowly. And now they're after me because I'm investigating the same trail. The syndicate that ordered the hit, Kai finished. They're still active. Still hiding something. Annabelle pulled back slightly, her mind already racing through implications, connections, data points that had seemed random until now. I can find them. I can trace the breach, connect it to current activity, build a profile. We find them, Kai corrected. Together. Kai, this isn't your fight anymore. You're my fight now. He said it simply, like stating a fact. They came after you because of me. That makes this personal. Annabelle studied him. This dangerous man with blood drying on his skin and desperate need in his eyes, who just discovered he could feel again and had chosen to feel her. This was insane. Reckless. The smart move was to run far and fast from Kaijin and his violent world. But she'd never been good at smart moves. Okay, she said. We work together. We find whoever tried to kill you. And we make sure they can't hurt anyone else. Kai's hand found hers, fingers interlacing. The sensation made him close his eyes briefly, overwhelmed by something as simple as holding hands. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For giving me this. For giving me, he opened his eyes. Everything. Annabelle squeezed his hand. Then let's make sure we survive long enough to enjoy it. They stood there in his bathroom, bloodied and bruised, holding onto each other like lifelines. Outside, Seoul glittered in the darkness, full of enemies and secrets and threats waiting to strike. But for now, in this moment, Kai Jin could feel again. And he wasn't letting go. Annabelle squeezed his hand. Then let's make sure we survive long enough to enjoy it. They didn't waste time. Annabelle set up in his penthouse, 3 monitors and a maze of cables transforming his pristine living room into a war room. Kai stood behind her, one hand resting on her shoulder, because he could, because the sensation grounded him, because touching her had become as necessary as breathing. There, she said, pointing at a screen full of code. The breach from 2 years ago. It originated from a shell company in Gangnam. Same digital signature as the group monitoring you now. Kai leaned closer, his other hand bracing against the desk. The PARP Syndicate. I should have known. You know them. They've been trying to absorb my network for years. Couldn't buy me out, so they tried to eliminate me. His jaw tightened. Now they've made a bigger mistake. Annabelle's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up financial records, communication logs, location data. They're meeting tomorrow night. Warehouse in Incheon. 13 members confirmed. Not for long. Kai made 3 calls. By dawn, his people had surrounded the warehouse. By sunrise, the Park Syndicate had been dismantled. Assets frozen, members arrested, their operations scattered like ash in the wind. Clean. Surgical. The kind of destruction that left no room for retaliation. When it was done, Kai returned to find Annabelle asleep on his couch, still wearing his shirt because hers had been ruined. He sat beside her, careful not to wake her, and just looked. She'd given him more than sensation. She'd given him purpose beyond survival. A reason to feel that had nothing to do with empire or strategy or control. Annabelle stirred, eyes opening. Is it done? It's done. She sat up, studying his face. You okay? Kai took her hand, pressed it against his chest where his heart hammered steady and real. I spent 2 years not feeling anything. Not caring about anything except staying alive. Then you called the wrong number and everything changed. He swallowed hard. I don't just want to feel again, Annabelle. I want to feel you. Every day. For as long as you'll let me. His voice cracked. I want you more than anything in this world. Annabelle was quiet for a moment, her sharp eyes reading every line of vulnerability in his face. Then she smiled, that real, unguarded smile that had first made his fingers tingle. Well, you're in luck, she said, because I happen to specialize in fixing broken systems. And you, Kai-Jean, are the most expensive project I've ever taken on. Is that a yes? That's a you're paying double my hourly rate for emotional labor. She pulled him closer. But yeah, it's a yes. Kai kissed her like she was oxygen, and he'd been drowning. Soft at first, then deeper, his hands cradling her face with the kind of reverence reserved for miracles. When they finally broke apart, Annabelle grinned against his mouth. Still can't believe a wrong number changed your entire life. Best mistake you ever made. Second best, she corrected. First was saying yes to you. Kai smiled, a real one, the kind he'd forgotten he could make, and kissed her again. Thank you so much for watching this story unfold. If Kai and Annabelle's journey grabbed you, if you felt that rush of sensation breaking through, drop a comment below and let me know. Your support means everything, and it's what keeps these stories coming. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay fierce, stay curious, and keep coming back for more.